What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with another podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? We got a loaded pod this week. Just a bunch of incredibly important things to discuss. Shogun on FX, the most expensive series FX has ever made. It's amazing. We gotta talk about it. ScHoolboy Q, back with his 6th album, Blue Lips, his first album in almost 5 years. It's amazing. We gotta talk about it. Dune Part Two from Denis Villeneuve, starring Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya and everyone else you care about in Hollywood. It's amazing. We gotta talk about it. Oh yeah, and 2024 Oscar predictions. We gotta make them. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod, Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. See the best of 2024 Spotify playlist linked below. Best songs of the year, updated every week. Let me know it's good, and let's get into it. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of ScHoolboy Q's 6th album, Blue Lips. Groovy Q is back with his first album since 2019. It's been almost 5 years. And honestly, thinking about ScHoolboy Q now really dates me. Thinking about how long I've been listening to ScHoolboy Q, how long I've been a huge fan of ScHoolboy Q. I believe I started listening to him in 2012, I want to say, when I first saw the There He Go video and just immediately was hooked, and learning more about TDE and artists besides Kendrick Lamar, of course, was a big eye-opening thing. And that, to me, ScHoolboy Q is easily one of the most significant signature, certainly top 10 rappers of the 2010s. Like his impact, his identity, his uniqueness, to me, that's completely certified, kind of undeniable stuff. And we've been waiting for Q to return. ScHoolboy Q famously has become a dad. He's been a dad for some time. He also is no longer a gangster on Hoover Street. He is a rich man. He likes to talk about that and talk about how lucky he is that how successful he has become. So getting a new record from Q, especially coming off the last album, Crash Talk, which was certainly his least successful album, his most commercial, but just kind of least introspective, the least going on under the hood of any of his albums. Getting the follow-up to that, I was very much anticipating that. And I am happy to say that ScHoolboy Q's Blue Lips is a huge return to form for Q. This is an excellent rap album. It's also an excellent ScHoolboy Q album. If you've been a fan of Q as long as I have, or even if you discovered him recently, this is what we want from Q. He is such a unique talent with his ability to switch up his flow, switch up his inflection, his tone, his persona on the mic. Now he's really giving us the gangster, the reluctant gangster, the father. There's so many identities to ScHoolboy Q on the mic, and he just is able to rap so excellently, expertly with his various flows, with his ability to find different pockets. And the production on this album, like many great Q albums of the past, quite layered. A lot of jazzy vibes to this one. There are some bangers on this album, also some great storytelling moments. To me, this is everything you want from a Q record. And I think track 3, Thank God for Me, man, that is a banger. That, to me, is probably one of the best Q songs he's ever made. That's going to go up there when it's all said and done. Blue Lips, I'm so happy how good it is. I'm so happy Q is back. And this is probably almost assuredly going to be a top 10 rap album of 2024. I'm very confident in saying that. Kind of going through the track list here, I think track 2, Pop, really stands out. This is definitely banger Q, featuring Rico Nasty. Beat switch up here, the bass drops in. I think Q's flow, nothing special in the beginning, but when the switch up happens, the flow gets a lot better. It's a lot tighter. And Rico's really able to meet the energy on this beat. Lyrically, some of it doesn't wow me. The pop repetitive stuff is whatever. But once Rico actually gets into the verses, it fits right in. I think it's pretty fun. Track 3, Thank God for Me. Again, I think this is probably going to be a Pantheon Q song, a top whatever Q song. This is excellent. So fire. Violins dropping in on the beat. The switch up gets even smoother with a newer flow from Q. A line I loved, I got a bucket at home, still mine. Of course, we all remember ScHoolboy Q's signature bucket hat back in the day. Yeah, I mean, that's the easy, song to revisit right now. Thank God for Me. I think it's absolutely excellent. But track 4, Blue Slides, also awesome. Assumingly a reference to Q's late friend Mac Miller and his debut album Blue Slide Park. Of course, a lyric on this song, "Lost a homie to the drugs." We know who that is. Slower song. You got the piano in there, you got the strings, but Q kind of talking about storytelling and talking about seeing his friend die, seeing how that affected other people, and realizing he needed to make changes in his own life. I think it's a great storytelling song, but also sounds great. Like, it goes. It's fun to listen to. Year in 101, one of the lead singles. That's just a banger, classic Q banger. Sounds great. I liked Lovebirds with Devin Malik. I thought Devin Malik, who's on this album twice, was a pretty strong feature. Movie features Aze Cheek, who I was not familiar with, but Az definitely kind of reminded me of YG in terms of the flow, in terms of the cadence of the rapping. I have to look into him a little bit more and see if he's also an LA rapper like YG, like Q. Maybe he is. Pretty cool. The next song, Cooties, another huge highlight. This is Q really storytelling, really talking about being a parent, being a father, talking about, gun violence in our country and how that affects how he makes decisions for his family, things like that. I think this song was great. Ohio, featuring Freddie Gibbs. Just a standard Q banger, really good, fun switch up again. The tempo really picks up, and once that switch up happens, Gibbs, I think, really fits right at home on the ScHoolboy Q song. Makes an academics diss very openly on the track. But I think Q can hang with someone like Gibbs, absolutely. And I think it feels like Gibbs doing a Q song, not Q doing a Gibbs song, which is what you want. Foe features Absol. Of course, I love anytime the Black Hippie guys reunite. It's pretty infrequent these days, of course, especially with Kendrick having long since left TDE to form PG Lang several years ago at this point. But to get Solo and Q together, again, Solo also not super active as a rapper, really fun. I think that one is great. Lost Times stood out to me production-wise for the horns. Q mentioned he wrote this song back in 2021. I thought that was great. Germany 86, again, kind of a more meditative Q from a lyrical standpoint. I think that one was good. Time Killers. I think this one is a big banger for sure. Really feels like a classic Q song because like the multiple voices you hear on this, like the kind of echoing and the dubbing and the doubling of vocals and stuff, really cool. Love this one. Pig Feet featuring Childish Major is certainly a banger. Certainly aggressive, as you can probably imagine from a title like that. Childish Major, by the way, not a name I've seen in a little bit. Cool to hear him again as both a rapper and a producer that he is. And the last song, Smile, it's a quick one, but Q kind of getting a bit more groovier, In general, a lot of the songs sprinkle in some, jazz influence, whether that's horns or whether that's like full on like jazz rap style production. But yeah, I mean, to me, like I said before, ScHoolboy Q is just such a singular artist for how he sounds. Like, no one sounds like him. He can never mistake Q for anyone else. And of course, he really represents, I think, an important moment in LA rap, of course, when Q started to blow up, because he represented kind of a way forward for LA rap that wasn't exactly just the kind of G-Funk revival type sound. And of course, we know how vibrant and vast LA hip-hop is and continues to be post ScHoolboy Q's debut. But to me, he's someone who's really stands the test of time as an artist, just reflecting back on some of those records. Of course, I think I still love the most Oxymoron, just from when that came out and the time of my life when that came out, but also just, man, that's like 7 bangers on that album. Just a fantastic record. Man of the Year, one of the best bangers of the last decade for sure. A lot of people are very partial to Blank Face for its darker switch and its production and whatnot. And of course, Q getting incredibly introspective on that record. And yeah, now he's the signature rapper on Top Dog Entertainment with Kendrick having left. And even though SZA has surpassed Q from a commercial standpoint, from a mainstream standpoint, it's great that Q is back. And I'm hoping the next album is an almost 5-year wait. Once again, I would love Black Hippie to reunite and do something. It just doesn't feel like that's anywhere close, with Kendrick having left TDE. But who knows? Maybe J-Rock will have an album for us soon and Q could be on that. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope. Sounds like J-Rock's got an album coming soon. It's been a long wait for him as well. I believe his last time was 2018, right? It's been a minute. Along those lines, I would love frequent Q collaborator ASAP Rocky. I believe they've made, 5 songs together, some amazing records. It's been 2018 was the last time we got a Rocky album. I'll take any opportunity I get. ASAP Rocky, please drop the album. He's married. He's got kids. Doing fashion stuff. We know. Rocky, just drop the record, please. We need it. And hopefully Q's on there. We'll see. But let me know. How'd you feel about ScHoolboy Q's Blue Lips? Were you as pleased with it as I am? Are you a big ScHoolboy Q fan? Let me know. What do you like most about him? And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Shogun, the new historical drama series on FX, streaming on Hulu. First 2 episodes out now. This show has been a long time coming. I've been following the development of the show for several years. It was announced, pre-pandemic. Very exciting. It's finally here. This show is based on the 1975 James Clavell novel and was famously previously adapted back in 1980 in one of the first kind of epic limited series of its kind, starring the great Toshiro Mifune of Akira Kurosawa fame, of course, and a redo of Shogun in the era of peak TV, in the era of massive TV spend, huge creative budgets, was of course very exciting, hence why this has been hyped up for several years. And Shogun 2024 also is awesomely stacked with amazing actors. Of course, the star of this would be Hiroyuki Sanada, arguably the most famous and celebrated Japanese actor of the last 30 years. Also have Anna Sawai in her 3rd high-profile TV series in a row, following Pachinko and Monarch over at Apple. And we also have the great Tadanobu Asano, who I've been a big fan of for some time. Cosmo Jarvis is the one key English character. John Blackstone, notably not going to be a lead of the show in the same way the John Blackstone character was the lead of the 1980 version of Shogun. I think a updating of the priorities of the storytelling makes a lot of sense as a Japanese show, spoken primarily in Japanese, although when we have the Portuguese being spoken, they do English for us as the viewer, which I think is a nice touch. And yeah, I think Shogun has a chance to be the best show of the year. Absolutely epic premiere. This show has amazing production values. I mean, this show was filmed in Canada, but it looks exactly like you'd expect feudal Japan, 1600 Japan, to look. Absolutely amazing. They spared no expense. And when you have a stacked cast with Hiroki Sanada, Tadanobu Asano, a rising star like Anna Sawai, and I think a kind of coming out of nowhere great performance from Cosmo Jarvis, this has everything you want, because the intrigue of factions and betrayals and war, the Game of Thrones comparisons make a lot of sense. It has a lot of those Thrones qualities, and clearly they spare no expense with the production. It looks gorgeous. The period detail is there, and there's just so much intrigue. There's so much fascination, I think, with the storytelling through those first 2 episodes, that I am completely on board. And yeah, I think this could be one of the best shows of the year, and given the track record of FX, I think we should be very confident in this being a great show. So I'm very excited about Shogun. Cannot wait to continue watching this series. I think ultimately, the details of the storytelling here are coming at a really interesting time. The show is set in 1600s Japan, which that puts us only 3 years before the beginning of the Edo period, the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate. A very famous time in Japanese history, and of course, this is still 250 years before Commodore Matthew Perry famously opens up Japan to the West, right? So, we're still way before the Meiji Restoration. I think this is a time that is well documented, but probably not as, the details are probably not as familiar with a lot of Western viewers, unless they're, big fans of Japanese history. And I'm actually kind of surprised, maybe not surprised, but the level of detail with the intrigue, I think, is really compelling through the first 2 episodes, where you have the presence of Portuguese traders, Portuguese Catholics, who are pretty entrenched as the sole European presence in Japan at this time. And Cosmo Jarvis's John Blackstone character is an Englishman sailing for the Dutch, but an Englishman who is a Protestant, of course, as an Englishman. And of course, the Protestant, Catholic, Christian violence of the time, people know. And I think the political machinations of what the Catholics, what the Portuguese are up to in Japan, and how the various factions of Japanese leadership at the time, how they seem to think about that, pretty compelling. And of course, I think this situation that our Japanese characters find themselves in, where we have this regent government featuring, of course, Hiroki Sanada's character as Toranaga, one of the 5 regents, and his rival, Lord Yoshido, played by Takehiro Hira. And of course, there's a few other regents as well, but there's 5. And just classic treatment, classic setup for regional conflict, succession conflict. I think you know that trope well, but we know that because it's just very compelling. There's going to be backstabbing. There's going to be betrayals. There's going to be violence. There's tons of violence in the premiere already. I think it's done very tastefully, but also this is a challenging time to be in, right? We see beheadings. We see a guy get boiled alive in episode 1. We see someone about to commit seppuku, but they spare us of the actual stabbing, right? It's a tough time. And once the battles kick off, as have been shown in the trailers for Shogun, I mean, it's going to really pop off the screen. Very exciting. I think Cosmo Jarvis, though, as Blackstone, really surprised me. I'd known the name, like he's been around, but I hadn't really seen him do anything too much. And he's like kind of, I think, funnily being compared to like Tom Hardy in terms of appearance, maybe in terms of his vocal performance, but his performance as Blackstone, but also how that character is being clearly used by Toranaga in terms of sowing the seeds of doubt amongst the other regents who are plotting against Toranaga. Like, it's all very compelling. And of course, Blackstone seeing the opportunity to protect himself by aligning with Toranaga. Very exciting. I love what we've got from Tanobu Asano thus far as this lord in service, under Toranaga. He's an awesome actor. He's very charismatic. It's funny enough, my first memory of seeing him is in the bad 47 Ronin remake with Keanu Reeves, where he's this amazing villain character, but he's been in a lot of things, of course. They're hinting at his weak allegiances already, so I'm curious if that'll stand or if he ends up being kind of a more pathetic character because Toranaga sees right through him. We'll see. Ishido seems like a compelling villain thus far, but I'm sure it's going to get more complicated. Anna Sawai, who I've been a fan of ever since we really started seeing her, after the kind of out of nowhere F9 debut, but then really popped off in Pachinko, starring role on Monarch last year. And this is another big showcase for her. She's very quickly becoming a huge TV actor for sure. And Sawai's character, Mariko, has a very important role as a Catholic who also speaks Portuguese and thus can be a translator for Blackstone, with Toranaga, with the others. So, yeah, I mean, I just think there's just so much richness here. There's clearly so much attention to detail, whether that's period detail, whether it's the storytelling. I think it's incredibly compelling. And yeah, I mean, I think there's just a lot of awesome moments of these first 2 episodes. I think the stuff, the boat, the boat swell where they all almost die on the journey to Osaka. I thought that was really great. Like, in terms of a set piece, looked fantastic. Like the Portuguese sailor guy that Blackstone meets and his comments about Blackstone basically being an idiot, for thinking Japan's uncivilized. And he's like, hey, take a look at Osaka. Amazing moment. I thought they had some pretty tactfully done exposition in episode 2 where the priest prisoner tells Blackstone basically like a data dump on who Toranaga is, who the other regions are, like what are the political dynamics. Very smartly done to give a little bit more info to the audience that we didn't quite get all of the picture painted for us in episode 1. Overall, it's a show that treats the audience, I think, pretty smartly. I love the map scene in episode 2 where Blackstone basically draws his perception of the world and explains that to Toranaga. Of course, Japan has been largely in isolation to this point. The assassination attempt scene, very good to end episode 2. They've really done a good job of showcasing Toranaga's intelligence, his ability to see the board, see the political machinations, and be like a smooth operator in face of danger. And of course, Hiroyuki Sanada just has so much charisma, so much presence, obviously, that I think all that really lands. So yeah, overall, I mean, I have nothing but good things to say through the first 2 episodes of Shogun. This will be perhaps the event limited series of the year. I mean, I hope the ratings are great for this. They've done a pretty good job marketing it. So I just hope people check this out because this has so many of the things you want with a compelling drama series. So over the moon for Shogun. Let me know, how are you feeling about it through the first 2 episodes? What are you most looking forward to seeing through the rest of the series? And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my 2024 Oscar predictions. I'm going to go through all the categories, go through the nominees, tell you who is going to win, who I think should win, but really who is going to win. We're going to nail these. Been doing predictions a long time. Of course, I talked about the Oscar nominees earlier, reacted to who got nominated, who didn't. So check that out if you missed that. Of course, I've reviewed every movie nominated for the big awards, so check those out as well. But let's get into the actual predictions here. And we're going to answer a few key questions. Is any category really up for grabs? Can anything stop Oppenheimer from demolishing everything in its path? That's kind of our key question here. But I will be highlighting a few races that I think are genuine toss-ups and carry a lot of intrigue. But let's just get right to the Oppenheimer of it all. So, of course, Best Picture, Oppenheimer is nominated alongside American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. And the question, of course, with Best Picture is, can anything but Oppenheimer win? And I'm here to tell you the answer to that is no. That is not the primary purpose of this video. We're just going to get this one out of the way. Oppenheimer is going to win Best Picture. I personally am quite happy with this. This is my number one movie of the year. It's going to win Best Picture, which also happened last year for me when Everything Everywhere All at Once won Best Picture. So I feel great about this. I think it's very justly earned. But just from the prediction side of things, let's look at the precursors. The Oppenheimer won the Golden Globe for drama. It also won the Best Picture equivalent award at the BAFTAs, the Screen Actors Guild Award, the Producers Guild Award, the Directors Guild Awards via winning Best Director, the Critics' Choice Award. It's won everything in its path. It hasn't been defeated. Poor Things won the comedy or musical Golden Globe for what that's worth. And then the BAFTAs, The Zone of Interest won Best British Film and also, of course, won Best Film in Non-English Language. But really, Oppenheimer has just kind of demolished the field here. There's really no reason to expect anything else. I think in terms of movies that have the most juice behind Oppenheimer and which would impact other awards, Oppenheimer leads the field with 13 nominations. Poor Things and Killers of the Flower Moon have 11 and 10. And then also The Zone of Interest, I think, has some juice. And Anatomy of a Fall also has a lot of juice. Other than that, I don't really think so. Killers of the Flower Moon, I think this is going to go the way of Martin Scorsese's previous film, The Irishman, where it gets a lot of nominations and doesn't win anything, with the exception of one big award in play, which we'll get to. So that's Best Picture. Oppenheimer's going to win. There's really nothing to suggest it won't. So let's move on from there. Let's get into the acting categories here. Best Actor, we have Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, Paul Giamatti for The Holdovers, Bradley Cooper for Maestro, Coleman Domingo for Rustin, and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. Can anyone stop Cillian Murphy? For a long time, this was talked about as a two-horse race between Murphy and Giamatti. You know, Giamatti and Murphy split the Globe wins, but then Murphy basically just kind of won out from here, winning the BAFTA and winning the SAG Award. Giamatti did win the Critics' Choice, but just in general, the Critics' Choice Award not as predictive as the Guild Awards, the true industry awards. And Jeffrey Wright did win the Independent Spirit Award for Best Actor, but he wasn't up against, the rest of the field here, so it doesn't mean a whole lot. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be an Oppenheimer night. Oppenheimer's going to do well, and Cillian Murphy's going to be a part of that. He's going to win Best Actor. Best Actress, we have Annette Bening for Nyad, Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon, Sandra Huller for Anatomy of a Fall, Carey Mulligan for Maestro, and Emma Stone for Poor Things. This is one of the key races to watch. I think this is a true two-horse race, Gladstone versus Stone, and I think it's really hard to know which way this is going. This is one of the big toss-ups of the night. Very exciting. Usually, Best Actress is given out early in the night, so one of the big surprises will probably be off the board quickly. Nonetheless, Gladstone and Stone split the Globe wins in different categories. Stone won the BAFTA, but Gladstone won the SAG, Stone also won the Critics' Choice. I'm going to go with Lily Gladstone here. You know, I think there's a lot of passion for that performance in Killers of the Flower Moon. Emma Stone also a previous winner, so I think some people would be leaning towards the spreading the wealth side of things. But you can't be shocked if Emma Stone wins, who's been nominated many times, and of course won already. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise. She is an Academy darling. But I think the wagons are circling around Lily Gladstone. Supporting actor, we have Sterling K. Brown for American Fiction, Robert De Niro for Killers of the Flower Moon, Ryan Gosling for Barbie, Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things, and Robert Downey Jr. for Oppenheimer. And this one is closed and shut. Throw away the key. This is locked in. Robert Downey Jr. is winning Best Supporting Actor. He won the Globe, he won the BAFTA, he won the SAG, and he won the Critics' Choice. He has not been defeated. He gives a good speech. And it's kind of like the return. Robert Downey Jr. escaped the Marvel machine and gave us a great performance as the villain of Oppenheimer. Very justly earned. Supporting actress also is going to be locked and shut. We have Emily Blunt nominated for Oppenheimer, Danielle Brooks for The Color Purple, America Ferrera for Barbie, Jodie Foster for Nyad, and Divine Joy Randolph for The Holdovers. And Randolph has absolutely dominated, unlike any actor nominee has this season. Randolph won the Globe, the BAFTA, the SAG, the Critics' Choice, and she won an Independent Spirit Award because The Holdovers was actually up for Independent Spirits as well. So, complete domination. She's going to win. Very easy. So, now let's move on to, I think, some awards that perhaps are a bit harder to predict, and I think more fun for that. And let's go right to, I think, perhaps the other big toss-up after Best Actress, which would be Best Animated Feature Film, where we have nominated Pixar's Elemental, Netflix's Nimona, Robot Dreams, and then the two that are competing for this win here, Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse from Sony. And this has really kind of split itself up once again. Boy and the Heron won the Globe and the BAFTA, but Spider-Man won the PGA, Spider-Man won the Critics' Choice, but I think predictive here most of all, Spider-Man won the Annie Award, the Animation Guild, means a lot of shared voting there, and it also won the Visual Effects Society's Animated Visual Effects Award. So I think the Annie Award and the VES Award kind of make this lean Spider-Man. Also the PGA Award shares a lot of voting as well. I would be pulling for Heron. That was my number 4 movie of last year. The previous animated Spider-Man movie, of course, won the Oscar as well several years ago. And it kind of feels odd to nominate the middle movie of a trilogy and give it the win as well, versus Miyazaki, who perhaps will never make another movie again. Likely that'll be the case. He's won one Oscar, 20 years ago. It'd be nice for him to get a second one for like this truly, I think, kind of awe-inspiring and kind of groundbreaking film from its storytelling. On the other hand, how many people have seen The Boy and the Heron compared to Spider-Man that are voters, and how many people are like Ghibli-pilled enough to understand all of its reference points? It's not the most inviting Ghibli film if you're not pretty familiar with those works. So, unfortunately, I think I have to lean Spider-Man, which is a great movie. It's was in my top 20, nothing against the movie. I would prefer Heron to win, but I think Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is going to win Animated Feature Film. Let's then go to Best International Feature Film, which has a lot of fun subtext this year. So the nominated films are Io Capitano from Italy, Perfect Days from Japan, which I just reviewed last week, Society of the Snow from Spain and Netflix, The Teacher's Lounge from Germany, and The Zone of Interest from the United Kingdom. You'll notice that there's no movie from France here. The Taste of Things, a great movie, which I also reviewed a few weeks ago, The Taste of Things was the French nominee and was expected to be nominated here, but actually was not, kind of surprisingly. And The Taste of Things was selected by France, meaning Anatomy of a Fall was not submitted for this category. Anatomy of a Fall is a Best Picture nominee and a contender in some other categories. The director of Anatomy of a Fall, Justin Triet, is nominated for Best Director. So you would think Anatomy of a Fall had this award in a walk if it actually was nominated, but it was not. So thus we have to default to the other Best Picture nominee that actually is in this category, which of course would be The Zone of Interest. And, looking at the wins here, Zone does get that for BAFTA, although it is a British film. The British bias is pretty clear. But again, just to kind of reinforce my point here, the equivalent of international feature film was won by Anatomy of a Fall at the Golden Globes, the Critics' Choice, and the Indie Spirit Awards. So France took an L with this one. In this case, because this would be a trophy for the film, even though it's been nominated elsewhere. So, yeah, Zone of Interest is going to win, which I have no beef with. Great film. I forgot to mention Best Director, which, of course, is Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, Martin Scorsese for Coast of Flower Moon, Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, and Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. Unsurprisingly, Nolan has cakewalked this for Oppenheimer, going to win his first Best Director, very thusly earned. He won previously for the Globe, the BAFTA, the PGA, and the DGA. No one has defeated Nolan. Lock this one in for sure. Best Documentary Feature Film is another one where it's pretty easy to forecast because only really one film nominated has won anything in the season thus far. That would be 20 Days in Mariupol, the documentary from Ukraine. And the other contender that has won some other awards in the lead up to this was American Symphony, but that doc was not nominated for an Oscar, so thus I think 20 Days in Mariupol is an easy lock for documentary feature. Best Original Score, the nominees are American Fiction, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. And I think this is pretty easily like an Oppenheimer win. Ludwig Göransson will win his second score Oscar, having previously won for the first Black Panther film. I think that one's pretty easy. He did win the BAFTA and the Globe and the Critics' Choice already. Moving on to the screenplay here. Original screenplay, the nominees are Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Maestro, May December, and Past Lives. And I think this one's funny because a lot of the precursor, or one of the precursor wins, some of the precursor contending nominees was Barbie. Of course, Barbie famously, notoriously, was deemed eligible for adapted screenplay instead. So it's not as predictive this year as it could have been. Additionally, the Writers Guild Awards were delayed due to the strikes. Those are not happening until April 14th. So while normally we would know who won the WGAs, we now only know the nominees. And in the nominees, of course, from the WGA, Anatomy of a Fall is not nominated due to WGA rules and in terms of eligibility for being up for those awards. So they're even less predictive than normal. I think if anything could spoil this win for Anatomy of a Fall, I think it's actually Past Lives. But as much as I would love that to happen, that was my number 2 movie of last year. I think it's going to be Anatomy of a Fall. It's a big win for that movie to get the screenplay win. The screenplay, arguably the best aspect of the film, alongside Sandra Huller's performance. Like it's a great screenplay, so I'm very happy that when that happens, that's fine. Conversely, adapted screenplay, we have American Fiction, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. And this one's probably a little bit easier to predict. I think Barbie is in the mix. I think Oppenheimer is certainly in the mix. But American Fiction has had some juice, winning the Critics' Choice, winning the Spirit Award, winning the BAFTA Award, and being nominated for WGA just like Oppenheimer was. So while Oppenheimer winning this would not shock me at all, I think Cord Jefferson's going to win this for adapted screenplay and American Fiction, and will be an awesome win, awesome kind of coming out party for Cord with his first, directorial film. Very cool. So that's where I'm going to go. Anatomy of a Fall for original screenplay, American Fiction for adapted screenplay, but keep an eye on Oppenheimer in adapted screenplay. Let's hit original song here, where as much as I would like I'm Just Ken from Barbie to win, I feel like it's going to be What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish and Phineas, also from Barbie. If I'm Just Ken had won, we would have had like one of the best periods of this usually fraught awards category, where Natu Natu from RRR, the Indian blockbuster, won this award recently. If you could have followed it up with I'm Just Ken, that would have been awesome, because those are both songs that actually make a real impact in the film itself. Usually these nominees for Best Original Song are like credit songs, opening title sequence songs, maybe a quick montage. Like, they're not really part of the film. It's a pretty weak category usually. Notice that Diane Warren once again is nominated for a song here, like she always is. The politics of this are weird. But Billie Eilish is just such a awards force. Obviously, look at her Grammy performance where she wins, record or song of the year in off album cycles. Like, you got to just bank on Billie Eilish at this point. And she won the Globe. The Critics' Choice did go to Ken, but I as much as I would love Ryan Gosling and I'm Just Ken to win and Mark Ronson to win, you got to go with Billie. Best Sound, the nominees are The Creator, Maestro, Mission Impossible 7, Oppenheimer, and The Zone of Interest. Once again, You cannot rule out Oppenheimer in this category, but it feels like it's going to be the Zone of Interest, which if you've seen that movie, sound is a huge part of it. Like, I mean, the sound design of that movie to haunting effect, incredibly powerful, incredibly effective, a huge aspect of the film. And, I'm doing this a little bit early. So the Cinema Audio Society, the CAS, basically the sound guild, their awards are not till Sunday, March 2nd. I had to do this a little early, so I don't know who will win. And Zone of Interest not nominated by that body. Oppenheimer was. So I feel like it's Zone of Interest versus Oppenheimer. And again, it'll kind of come down to like how many people saw Zone of Interest versus Oppenheimer. It shouldn't come down to that, obviously, but and Zone of Interest, nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, so it's probably not a big issue, but just something to think about there. But I'm going to go with Zone of Interest for Best Sound. And it'd be nice if Oppenheimer doesn't win all the down ballot awards and we get a little bit of wealth spreading. That would be nice. Similar thought here. Best Visual Effects. This is a category where Oppenheimer was not nominated. The Creator, Godzilla -1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible 7, and Napoleon are your nominees for Best Visual Effects. And this one, I think, is also pretty hard to predict, where the BAFTA went to Poor Things defeating Oppenheimer, which, of course, is not nominated for the Oscar. The Critics' Choice went to Oppenheimer, again, not nominated. But then the Visual Effects Society went to The Creator, and that was over Oppenheimer, who was nominated there. So, it's interesting. I feel like there's a lot of juice for Godzilla -1 as well, and frankly, those are my picks. Like, I would be over the moon if The Creator or Godzilla -1 win this award, and I feel like it's The Creator, but it's a hard one to pick. The Marvel 0 streak in this category will continue. I'm not going to pick Guardians Volume 3. Hilarious that streak continues, even though that was pretty good for Marvel standards. But The Creator and Godzilla -1, they both represent new paths forward for blockbuster visual storytelling in Hollywood, where both those films have such modest budgets, but they look anything but. And that's what you're rewarding by this, win here. So I think either one's justly earned. Maybe there's a bit more juice for Godzilla -1, which would be amazing if that happened. I mean, The Creator really knocked me out. $80 million movie looks like was made for $200. Godzilla -1 made for like $25 million. Looks fantastic. It's really hard to say. And again, I'm doing this a little bit early, so I don't know. I'm going to go with The Creator based off that VES Society win, but it's a hard one to say. Best Film Editing, the nominees are Now Me Will Fall, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Oppenheimer won the Critics' Choice, won the BAFTA, and again, I'm doing this a little bit early, so I don't know who won the Ace Eddie Awards, which would be the editing body. That being said, I feel like it's going to be Oppenheimer. Winner of Best Film Editing is often predictive of Best Picture win, and usually when you have a dominant Best Picture winner, editing you can bank on here, so I think that one's pretty safe to say. Similarly, cinematography, again, the American Society of Cinematographers, ASC, their awards are just about to happen, so I don't know who won that one either, but the BAFTA and Critics' Choice also went to Oppenheimer for cinematography, so I think that one, again, pretty safe. The other nominees are Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon, El Conde, and Poor Things. So in terms of down ballot, we're giving sound, cinematography, and film editing to Oppenheimer. Maybe in the mix for adapted screenplay, or certainly in the mix for adapted screenplay. Maybe they win. Some other ones here. Production design. I think this is another one that's kind of fun, kind of up in the air, where Poor Things won the BAFTA, Barbie won the Critics' Choice. The other nominees are Napoleon, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer. And I feel like that's kind of like really up in the mix there. Where does Oppenheimer have a big night and win production design? Or is it going to be Poor Things? Or is it going to be Barbie? I feel like the lean is actually Barbie here. And I mean, it was amazing production design. It really makes that movie sing, makes that movie work. So I think that's where we should go with Barbie production design. But it's hard one to really be super confident in. I think makeup and hairstyling also kind of similar, where the nominees are Golda, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Society of the Snow. I don't think Oppenheimer is going to win makeup and hairstyling. If it does, it's probably winning damn near everything it's up for, all 13. But, I think Poor Things winning the BAFTA, Barbie winning the Critics' Choice. But I don't know, you would think the juice would be behind Maestro for this. Maestro kind of becoming the Oscar villain this season, not achieving what Bradley Cooper and friends wanted from that film. That being said, I think they kind of get a token win in makeup and hairstyling, which is often an award that can go to all kinds of films, big and small. Yeah, we'll go with that. And yeah, I said I was going to do all the awards. I always skip the short categories. Don't pick those. Apologies for that. Nonetheless, that is all the picks. So obviously, Oppenheimer is going to have a big night. And the question is really, who wins animated feature? Who wins adapted screenplay? Who wins best actress? I think those are your key races to watch, and they're all big races. So that'll be fun. And yeah, like I said, even if it's a bit boring this year, we had so many precursors. It's easier and easier to predict what's going to happen. I still like the Oscars. I still like talking about them. I like when the Oscars do a good job. That's why I talk about them. But let me know, who do you want to see win amongst the nominees? What prediction did I get wrong? Let me know. And for more Oscar talk, I'll be reacting to who wins when that happens. So make sure you come back for that. But for more Oscar predictions, including my early 2025 Oscar predictions in 2 weeks' time, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Dune Part Two, the new science fiction epic film from Denis Villeneuve, of course, his follow-up to Dune Part One from 2021, starring Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, and a whole other bunch of amazing actors. I'm going to spoil Dune Part Two in full, but let's just say I love this movie. I think this is a huge step up from the first one, and yeah, can't wait to get all the way into this. This movie is spectacular. Dune Part 2 is an epic cinematic achievement. This is a huge step up from Dune Part 1. Denis Villeneuve is giving us amazing immersive world building, impeccable sound design, really choice production design and costume design, gorgeous visual effects, and two really great performances from Timothée Chalamet as Paul and Zendaya as Chani. The way those two look at each other, I mean, you can't teach this. They sell this movie. Zendaya in particular really carries the emotional heart of this movie. But thematically, some of the themes about religion and birthright and destiny, I think, are quite compelling. There's so many amazing, memorable set pieces in Dune Part 2. It's just so memorable. It's so riveting. It moves at such a great pace. And I think really handles the magnitude of Frank Herbert's, massive celebrated novel in a great way. I think everything about this movie really lands. We have some amazing introductions of new characters. I think the chief among them would be Austin Butler's performance as Fade Ralpha. Really makes an impression, but also really loved Florence Pugh in a smaller role as the daughter of the Emperor, played by Christopher Walken. Lee Seydoux also joins the cast as a Bene Gesserit member. So yeah, I think Dune Part 2, this just kind of knocked my socks off. I was so entertained by it. Javier Bardem has so much more to do as Sitar, one of the Fremen leaders. There's really just so much to like. And I think ultimately what makes Dune Part 2 so special, and these two Dune movies so special, is just, I think, the auteur vision that Denis brings to this filmmaking really just sets these movies apart when it comes to blockbuster epic films. They look better than any other blockbuster, but they also, I think, are made in such an intelligent way, and the storytelling is done in such an intelligent way that you don't sacrifice the cinematic vision and the wow factor by any means. But there's also just a lot more under the hood with these movies as well, partially due to the, stellar source material. So, man, I was just knocked out with this. And I think, just kind of going through it, right? Like, I mentioned the Zendaya Chalamet pairing here, and I think Zendaya is doing great work as Chani, a role that's kind of been beefed up in the movie compared to the role in the novel, where the character is a lot more of a supporting role. But Chani gets to have a really important piece in the narrative here for the viewer, where she kind of represents the seeds of doubt and disbelief and distrust of Paul, and the push by some Fremen members such as Sitar, of course by the Bene Gesserit, to make him into the Muad'Dib, the Fremen Messiah, and she's just skeptical of this because of him obviously being an off-worlder, an outsider to the Fremen world, and Arrakis, of course. She just has doubts about the religious fundamentalism. Doesn't believe in the prophecies. I think it's really great to have that perspective, where at the same time Chani gets closer and closer to Paul as she's training him in the ways of the Fremen, in the ways of the desert. And I think really all that kind of training stuff, the build-up to Paul riding a sandworm, for the first time. And I think that was all like spot on, like amazing stuff. But really, that kind of the opening set piece is great, where the Fremen ambush a bunch of Harkonnen soldiers out hunting in the desert. The physicality of the combat really lands with this movie because the sound design's so good. When there's physical combat, when they're punching and kicking each other, you feel it, you hear it, especially if you watch this in like a Dolby screen where like the sound is very good. Like there's real power and oomph behind the combat with this. And I think the fact that it's more of a hand-to-hand and sword fighting combat as opposed to lots of guns, despite this being a futuristic story, really helps kind of bring that home. The introduction of Austin Butler as Fade Ralpha, the Harkonnen princeling under Baron Harkonnen, introducing him on the Harkonnen homeworld of Giedi Prime, shown to us in this black and white, monochromatic look, kind of on the nose, the Nazi imagery of the Harkonnens when we see their forces and whatnot. But the introduction to Ralpha in this gladiator arena and kind of being introduced to his madness, his psychosis, I think was done really well. And a fun build-up to the famous duel at the end of Dune between Paul Atreides and Fade Ralpha, where, again, the physicality of that combat, watching Chalamet and Butler beat the shit out of each other, was epic. It was really good. Another great set piece in this movie is the attack on the spice field, where Chani and Paul are tag teaming as the rest of the Fremen, as the guerrilla warriors that they are attacking, and Chani rocking the rocket launcher, Paul getting things done. And the movie continues to build up these everyone's belief in Paul as the Fremen Messiah as things continue to happen and succeed. And I think the movie starts to convince you of Paul, and there's some great moments where Chalamet, showcases the talent we've talked about, for 7 years at this point with him, where there's just a magnetism, there's just a charisma to his presence as an actor. And he really turns that up in a few moments. And like, you see why people want to believe in him. Like, he really comes into his own in the role of Paul, as Paul, the character, is coming into his own as the role of the Messiah and Savior of the Fremen and Arrakis. So I think Chalamet, I love the scene where there's the Fremen War Council down, underground in the Sitar, and when he kind of just suppresses any challenge, and I think really speaks with a lot of authority. Like, it's very compelling stuff. In general, I just really like the themes that Dune presents. None of these are like brand new themes or anything, but between the Bene Gesserit perspective of these like grand, cross galaxy manipulation over, decades on end. And then, the in the moment stuff from the Chani perspective of an outsider taking control, grasping power through seducing one's people. Just the themes of religious fundamentalism, propaganda versus motivation and birthright, how it's treating religion and different versions of that. Like, again, these are not new themes by any means, but the fact that a lot of this is here and there's a lot of depth to this in a blockbuster sci-fi film, again, just I think speaks to the high level that a movie like Dune Part 2 is operating in. Dune Part 1, which I loved quite a bit, but has some detractors. Dune Part 1 did a lot of that legwork with setting up the world and bringing us into this. And I think Dune Part 2 is able to get a bit busier, and also just has, I think, bigger and more engaging set pieces as well. So that's why I think it's a huge level up. Javier Bardem has just a lot more to do in this movie, like Zendaya does. And Bardem as a Sitar, he's a zealot. He's a believer in Muad'Dib, Messiah. He's a believer in Paul, really from the jump. And I think he does a great job of bringing a kind of emotional texture to some of the characters in this movie, because Dune is a story, the way it's told to us, where we move across plot pretty deftly. There's a lot going on throughout this, but Bardem's presence as someone who's really grounded to where we are in the moment-to-moment scenes, I think does a great job. And he's also has some of the better levity moments as well. He's pretty funny. Honestly, hats off to Austin Butler as Fade Ralpha for really like selling the fact that he's supposed to be the progeny of Baron Harkonnen, played by Stellan Skarsgård. And Baron Harkonnen, I think, is a more menacing presence in the first Dune. Kind of all the backstabbing of House Atreides, the killing of Oscar Isaac's Duke Leo. In that scene, he's more of like a side villain this time around, or like nothing like really new per se. Same thing with Dave Bautista, who's just kind of this like pure id, like grunt villain character. But Butler as Fade, Butler, I think, does a great job of communicating like the terror of this like maniac with limited screen time. And certainly I think makes a big impression to me. Like, he's a guy with a lot of presence, and even if like the classic like Austin Butlerisms that we think of him as like a brand new movie star for us, he's bald in this movie. He's speaking again with a voice that's supposed to kind of invoke being related to Stellan Skarsgård. I think he does a great job with it. But overall, like I was pretty impressed with Butler here. Florence Pugh, I liked quite a bit in the movie. She just doesn't have a whole lot to do, as the daughter of the Emperor Princess Irulan. And she does a bit of exposition, moving some plot. Obviously, she's going to be a key character in the future of the Dune story, based on where her and Paul are at by the end of Dune Part Two. But I mean, just adding flow to this movie just like adds so much power to it, And even if a lot of times she's just kind of wearing the Bene Gesserit, crazy outfits, I think when she is speaking, whether to her diary or whether to her father, the Emperor, it lands. Christopher Walken, it's like flashy to have him as the Emperor. He doesn't have a whole lot to do. He's not quite as like charismatic per se. I don't know if maybe there was a better person to cast the same. Feels blasphemous to say that about Christopher Walken, but I'm not sure. Maybe there was something else. And Lee Seydoux, small role again as a Bene Gesserit member who is the Bene Gesserit's way into manipulating Ralpha. But I think she has just pretty good and basically like 1.5 scenes. And then of course the surprise of the movie with casting. This was kind of spoiled when the premiere happened, so it wasn't a surprise to me. But Anya Taylor-Joy is cast in Dune as well as Paul Atreides' unborn sister. Of course, Paul's sister is still within the womb of Lady Jessica, Rebecca Ferguson's character. But again, like to add that level more star power to Dune, it's just crazy, right? We have Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, Zendaya, Austin Butler, and now Anya Taylor-Joy. That is 5 of the like A-list talent of today and tomorrow when it comes to Hollywood. Like, just amazing stuff. Can we find a way to get Saoirse Ronan in this? Chalamet reunion? I don't know. But yeah, like some of the scenes with, just to circle back to some of the scenes with Chalamet and Zendaya really brought me back to Chalamet and Saoirse Ronan in Little Women. When Joe and Laurie are like on the hill, that scene, Little Women, just amazing chemistry, amazing emotional moment, and just the way they were connected, Ronan and Chalamet. That's how I felt when Zendaya and Chalamet are talking to each other on the dune before they kiss. I was like, fuck, like this is real. Like this is like real palpable chemistry and just speaks to them. And I think Zendaya throughout the movie from that point on, her facial expressions, the way she can communicate so much with her gaze, with her looks, it does so much for this movie to really, I think, layer it out and again give you like that kind of multitude of perspective as a viewer within this big epic story. So yeah, I think Dune Part 2 just absolutely rips. Like, there's amazing set pieces, all that, narrative subtext from a thematic perspective, as I mentioned, great performances, great star power, and just incredible craft throughout, whether it's visuals, costume design, production design, of course, cinematography and direction. So, like, I just don't know what else you would want. And when you compare this to other blockbusters, other big budget films, I mean, this rises to the top, and I hope that the sophistication with the craft with this movie will help people up their game, where you can spend a lot of money like you do on Dune and make it look amazing, just the way there are ways to save money and make it look amazing as well, like we got last year with Godzilla -1 or The Creator. You can do this shit great, and Dune is showing you how to do that. So Yeah, Dune Part 2, this shit rips. I will have a hard time seeing a scenario where it's not in my top 10 films of 2024. Very exciting. And thankfully, the box office is looking to be probably twice as good as Dune Part 1. Of course, Dune Part 1 came out end of 2021 as a day-and-date release on HBO Max when Warner Brothers was doing that, and opened to 40 million, made 400 million worldwide, one of the big successes of the COVID box office. Dune Part 2 looking to open domestically 80 million plus by the sound of it, so high hopes for this movie to keep it going. And then Dune Part 3, which we know has a script nearly done, I assume that'll get greenlit pretty soon. But let me know, what did you think of Dune Part 2? How would you compare it to Part 1? What's your favorite moment? What are you most looking forward to seeing next? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time. All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, of course, I'll be recapping the Oscars, talking about who won, who didn't win. Also, new albums from Ariana Grande, very exciting. New album from Bleachers. Also got to talk about The Regime, starring Kate Winslet on HBO. And I'm going to try and get to Avatar: The Last Airbender live action on Netflix as well. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the best of 2024 Spotify playlist. Hit me up on Twitter. Leave an iTunes review. 5 stars on Spotify. Do all those things if you can. And I'll see you next week.